Hello and welcome to the Film Buffs movie channel. Man, it has been a very long time since I've been able to say that. I have not uploaded a video since August 2018, and yeah, it's been a rough time. I tried to start blogs and podcasts, and all of them just never really worked. YouTube was the only successful thing I had with movies. I always love to talk about movies, always love criticizing them, and on YouTube, I was happy. Now, there was a lot of reasons why I stopped, which I won't get into, but yes, I am back, and that's the important thing. And I thought, instead of doing like a whole movie review, which I will do those, trust me. I have written a lot from this year, and I plan on taking those movies and those written reviews, sorry, and putting them into video form. So before I do that, I want to get a camera and a mic, and I did order them. They are coming in. So for now, I am going to use the screen recorder, which I won't, the screen recorder won't go away for forever once I get a camera and a mic. Now, but once I do that, these will be less and less frequent. However, I thought, what would be the perfect video to make that's very heavily involved with the screen? Well, a tier list. Now, I know everyone's been doing these for the past year, and everyone recently, for some reason, is doing a Marvel one, but I really like these things just because they're a lot easier to digest for the viewers than a huge ranking video, and they're a lot easier to make, so it's kind of a win-win. So, yeah, I feel like this is the best possible way to do this. Now, before we get into this, I do want to say that I have very controversial, I guess, opinions on the MCU. Not a lot of my opinions will line up with yours, and that's perfectly okay. That's bound to happen. But with me especially, I like a lot of hated movies in this franchise, and am not the biggest fan. I have a lot of beloved ones. So, just sit tight here. These are just my opinions, so keep that in mind. If you want to debate about it, do it civilly. That's a weird word. And do it in the comments. I would love to hear your guys' opinions. Drop your ranking or drop your top 5 or top 10 or, whatever you want to do. As long as you keep it civil and, respectful, I would love to have a conversation with you guys. So, yeah, if you would like to do that, go ahead and do it. Drop your opinions in the comments. However, keep in mind, these are just my opinions. So without further ado, let's get right into the ranking. First up, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is kind of a harder one to do. I'm going to put it in B tier for now. Now, I love Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and 1. I'm just going to flat out say it. For the most part, I think these are some of the most enjoyable movies in the MCU and some of the most rewatchable. I think they have a great cast, amazing direction from James Gunn, and both of them have really good villains for their movies. Yes, Ronan is kind of a generic villain, but I'll get into that when I talk about the first movie. However, when it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I feel like everyone thinks this is one of the weaker MCU movies, and I just don't agree with that. I put it in B tier because I think B tier is the solid movies. These are just good movies. A and S are either really great or top tier, and then C and D are either really bland or bad. And B tier is just solid, and I think that really describes Guardians of the Galaxy 2. It has really good emotion in it, it has really good humor when the humor is done right, and I just love this cast of characters and this world. I love seeing them interact with each other in this world. I love the humor of these movies, I love the music of these movies, just everything about Guardians of the Galaxy is, very specific to what I like in a superhero movie. Or especially a Marvel superhero movie. So, I have a very personal bias with the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I guess. So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 for me is one of my favorites, I guess, in the B tier. It'll be very top of the B tier. Yes, I understand that some of the characters really don't work. I don't know their name, but the gold people in the movie, yes, they suck. They shouldn't be in the movie. Yes, sometimes the humor isn't utilized in the best way. It's in some scenes that it really shouldn't be. However, the emotional moments in this movie are amazing. I mean, everything with Peter Quill and his father, Ego turning into this complete piece of crap, and Yondu dying. Spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, but just everything about that works so well. And like the send off Yondu gets at the end is perfect. Just everything about this movie is, everything about emotionally, I should say, about this movie is great. And you know what? I love the cast. I love the direction. Like I keep saying, this is a very personal bias movie for me. So I will admit that, it's not one of the best. Well, it's not one of the most well made Marvel movies. It has a few flaws. However, I do think it also has some of the best emotional moments and some of the best character moments throughout any of the MCU movies. So I have to commend it for that. And Guardians of the Galaxy 2 goes in the B tier. Next up, we have another very kind of biased, I guess, but this is a very beloved movie in the MCU anyway. Spider Man Homecoming goes in the A tier for me. And I love Spider Man. He is one of my favorite Marvel characters, not just superheroes, characters, and his on screen presence is very diversive and pulverizing. A lot of people love the Spider Man movies they love and hate the ones they hate, and I'm very much the same way. So, when this movie came out in 2017, I was hoping that finally, this could be the Spider Man movie that we all agree on. And it was. It was a very, very good movie. Yes, it may not be the most Spider Man movie, but I think that worked in its favor. It's more of a high school comedy, it's more focused on the personal life of Peter Parker. Ned is a completely made up character, but I think he was so vital to this film's success that, he was just a great addition. I like Peter Parker's relationship not only with his aunt and Ned, but with Tony Stark, kind of being that father figure that he never had. I love the villain in this movie. I love how whenever he kind of showed up, the movie was kind of being more lighthearted, kind of fun. Either having kind of peppier music, and then it all just cuts out, and then he just comes in and completely, like, I guess, ruins it, but in the best way possible. He has this very villainous presence, and Michael Keaton is just a fantastic actor. He is completely owning the role, and it's great. Also, one quick little side note, I guess, the gym teacher played by this comedian who I always forget his name. I'm usually decent with names, and this guy, his name always just blank in my mind, but he's hilarious. Love his character. Very, very small, but just amazing. And even my initial review of the movie, I'm kind of taking this back. I like Flash in this movie. I like how he just isn't this big meat-headed jock bully. I love how he's just kind of this dude that is a dick to Peter, but isn't really a bully. He's just kind of there, and he's not really super popular or really liked. He's just kind of this dick, and I kind of like that. Uh, you know, I just really like everything about this movie, and I haven't really said this, but I love Tom Holland as Peter Parker. I know everyone says that, but he's perfect here. He really is, and Peter Parker in this movie is just so likable and so fun to watch that this movie is so rewatchable. It's kind of like the ultimate summer superhero movie, and for that, I really really enjoy it. Maybe not the best representation of Spider-Man, but the Spider-Man that we really needed back in 2017 and even up to now. Next up is a movie who negative, unfortunately. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, I have very mixed feelings about this movie. It came out right after Infinity War, which I was completely blown away by in the best way possible. I will get to that when I get to that. And it was trying to be this breath of fresh air, being a laid back movie. It wasn't the world was ending or anything like that. It was just more of a chill superhero movie, I guess. Very low key, very in the moment. And well, I like the idea of that. In practice, this movie is bland. It is really bland. The humor, for the most part, doesn't work. I hate how they turn Ant-Man's character into this kind of a dumb character. They do this a lot with, kind of weirder characters who are kind of oddballs in the first movie, that are portrayed as not having the best common sense, but also being, really smart on their own, and just turning them into complete dumbass, really. And I didn't like that they did that to Ant-Man's character. Wasp is okay. Hank Pym kind of gets on my nerves in this movie. I hate the villain. Just everything about her is boring and very Marvel generic. Marvel does have a villain problem majorly, and she is a big part of that. However, Walter Goggins' character, who's kind of like the side villain, I thought he was hilarious. A very funny take on that kind of generic Marvel villain. Just a really good role for him. I really liked him in this movie. But other than that, I don't see myself ever really coming back to this movie, other than the shoehorned in part at the end that connects to Infinity War. There isn't really anything that rewatchable about it. The humor doesn't stick for me. The characters are kind of dumb. The villain is boring. The story is just nothing. It is just nothing. It was too simple for its own good. Yes, we kind of needed a film similar to this after Infinity War, but again, execution is everything, and this movie just didn't have that. It's not terrible. I can't say it's on like a Thor 2 level. Another spoiler, but you know, this isn't one of my favorites by a landslide. And now the likable version of that movie, Ant-Man, which will go in the B tier. Again, not one of my favorites in the MCU, for sure. It'll definitely be on the weaker side of the B tier, but I think Paul Rudd's charisma in this movie and the humor put it ahead of kind of the more bland movies. Yeah, it's not the most rewatchable. In hindsight, it's not really like a great movie. It kind of falls into that theory that all Marvel movies are the exact same. This movie kind of has that sin, but I still find it enjoyable, honestly. Again, Paul Rudd is great. I do really like the hammy villain in this movie, just how evil he is. He doesn't really have a personality other than that, but I think he works for this movie. I actually do like Hank Pym in this movie. The two, Michael Pena, and then the dude who is in The Dark Knight, which I don't know his name off the top of my head, but those two are fantastic. Just this movie is a very fun movie. It's that laid back kind of smaller scale Marvel movie that Ant-Man and the Wasp tried to do, but Ant-Man did it better and it did it first. Yes, I would have liked to see an Edgar Wright version, but I think everyone is kind of over that now. And the product we did get was okay enough, to be passable. So I commend that. I like this movie. I don't love it. It's not one of my favorites, obviously, but I still think it's enjoyable enough. And now to another one of my least favorites. I unfortunately have to put Avengers: Age of Ultron in the D tier. It probably will be at the the best of the D tier movies, but still one of my least favorite Marvel movies. Now there are some things I do like here. I like the charisma between the cast for the most part. I think the action sequences are great. Some of the direction is really really good. Some of the shots that you get here, I think are amazing. However, this movie just is annoying. To put it bluntly, an annoying movie. A lot of the humor does not work here. It's a very misplaced and way too lighthearted. It's almost a comedy, and I just don't like that. I don't like that style of Marvel movie. It's Joss Whedon can lean way too much into it to where he does find a middle ground, and it has worked before, obviously. However, he did the same thing with Justice League, where he took a movie that really isn't supposed to be humorous and made it humorous, and it just feels off. for the most part in this movie. Quicksilver is also really underutilized here. I don't like Ultron as a villain whatsoever. It's a very, very weird movie, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, and kind of a forgotten movie. I don't really hear a lot of people talk about this movie or reference it. It was pretty popular when it first came out amongst my group of friends. However, it's kind of one of the more forgettable Marvel movies in the worst way possible. It's not really bland, but it's kind of too weird to remember, which is kind of a contradiction. But if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So, Age of Ultron just does not work for me. It's hard to describe how weird this movie is, but also generic at the same time. It's a very choppy movie. It doesn't work. It is not a good Marvel movie whatsoever. Okay, let's stop with all this negativity and talk about my favorite MCU movie, Infinity War. Yes, again, big spoilers for the rest of the video. I don't care. Infinity War is easily my favorite out of all these movies. It is close with another one, which I will get to. It is very, very close with another one. However, I think this one beats it out with its ending. This movie did the impossible of taking 10 years of world building and characters and storylines and stuff like that, and puts them together and somehow makes it work. And not only just makes it work, but creates an amazing movie out of it. I don't think anyone but the Russo brothers could have done that. And this movie just, it shouldn't work. This movie should not work. This should have been a disaster. It should have been a mess, but it wasn't. It was so well written. All the characters were fantastic, and the different characters that were put together were amazing. The return of some characters, the kind of like the entrance of characters were done really well. The Battle of Wakanda was amazing. I like T'Challa in this movie way more than I liked him in his own movie, and that is kind of a problem in the MCU. He is way better in the movies that that aren't his own. I'll get to that when I talk about Black Panther in a second, but anyway, T'Challa is fantastic in this movie. Steve Rogers is fantastic in this movie. Thor is so good at this movie. I don't think they could top the turnaround of Thor Ragnarok, full 180 on Thor's character. I don't think they could have topped that, but somehow they did. I like him even more in this movie. He is the Thor that I always wanted him to be in this movie. Quippy, very witty, but also very heroic and just a badass. And with the earlier Marvel movies, we never got to see that, and finally we got to see it here. There's some amazing shots in this movie. There's some really good music. The tonal shifts all really work. The humor is really, really good. Thanos is easily, by a landslide, the best villain in the MCU. Way better than Loki. I don't want to hear it. He's just such an imposing threat. Every time he goes on screen, you have no idea if these characters are going to live or die, and that's amazing. And Josh Brolin just is so good as Thanos, and the dialogue for him, just everything about Thanos. I love Thanos very much. However, even though everything I just mentioned is great, what sets this movie aside, I think, from every other MCU movie is its ending. And even though I had it slightly spoiled for me, I knew some of the characters who quote-unquote died. They didn't really die, but turned to dust. I knew some of that. However, the way it happened hit me very hard. I was floored at how this movie ended. There's kind of the balls of this movie, for lack of a better word, just to do that and leave it at that for a whole year. We had no idea what was going to happen next, and it was perfect. It was one of the last movies for me that everyone was talking about. Everyone was like, have you seen Infinity War? You got to see it, blah, blah, blah. I saw it 4 times in the movie theater. This movie is just everything I love about the MCU and way, way, way more. The ending is fantastic. I could go on and on about Infinity War, but, we only have so much time, so I'll leave it at that. It is my favorite MCU movie by far, and I do think it is the best MCU movie, so that's why it's going to go at the top of the S tier, and it's going to stay there. Okay, Black Panther. Let's talk about it. It's going to go right there. Now, I like Black Panther. A lot of people think when I talk about this movie, they think I hate this movie. That is not true at all. I like the movie. Okay? I like Black Panther. I think it is a very important movie that should have happened, and I'm very glad that it did. I think it has one of the best plots in the MCU. I think not well written, but the storyline is very, very good. And I've come around a full 180 yeesh, on Killmonger. I think he's a great villain. No, not as good as Thanos, not nearly, but better than Loki, better than a lot of other villains inside the MCU. So I thought, uh, you know, Killmonger's great. However, my main issue with this movie isn't the visuals. Actually, a little bit. The final battle is really disappointing. I have to kind of say that a little bit. The visual effects were terrible in it. It was just a very underwhelming final battle, so I didn't really like it. And some of the action scenes are a bit clunky. Ryan Coogler didn't do the best job at directing them, which is a little disappointing. But hey, you know, he did such a good job with the rest of the movie. I can't really blame him for it. I mean, I can. I will take points off of this movie for that. But anyway, I am rambling. The reason why this movie isn't an A or S tier is because of T'Challa. He has nothing to do in this movie. In his own movie, he is sidelined, and that just pisses me off beyond belief. I don't care about his sister, honestly. I really don't. For as much as a fun character that she is, and very unique, I don't care. I want to see more of T'Challa because this is his movie, and he's one of the most interesting characters inside of the whole MCU when he's done right. His arc in Civil War, which I will talk about in a second, is amazing. I love him way more in that movie than I ever did in this movie. This one, he just kind of hangs out and does his own thing, and it it bothers me a lot that other characters got the spotlight in this movie, and that is what's holding it back from being an A or S tier movie. It is a very annoying thing about this movie that it could have been so great, but it isn't, just because of something that could have been fixed very, very easily by just giving him more screen time, less screen time on the more minor characters. However, I do really like Wakanda. I love the costume design in this movie. Everything about that is great. Killmonger is great. The plot is great. Script, could have gone through a couple more drafts. Some of the jokes are pretty terrible. But this is a movie that I like. I need to stress that the most. I like this movie, and I very much like what it stands for and how important it was in the grand scheme of things. However, I would have very much liked to see T'Challa shine in this movie, I guess, as much as he did in Civil War. Okay, we gotta pick up the pace slightly here. I've just noticed that I'm kind of rambling. Apologize. This is my first video back, so cut me a little bit of slack. Anyway, Civil War, I'm gonna put that in A tier. This is a movie that it's just a great Marvel movie. This. Sorry, I got kind of cut off there, and I was rambling a little bit there. Civil War is great because of its central conflict between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. I think they both have compelling arguments onto why this bill shouldn't be passed. That the government kind of chains, I guess, the Avengers, and they can't just do whatever they want. And it's a very compelling issue that is interesting to see play out on the screen. Sorry for that kind of interruption there. I've just a lot of things just happen, so yeah, completely ignore the kind of cut out stuff. Anyway, Civil War is a very interesting movie in the MCU because of its central conflict, Tony Stark versus Steve Rogers, and to see them kind of split the Avengers down the middle and seeing each of them have their own side of the story when it comes to the bill about, kind of restricting the Avengers and what they can do. It's all really compelling stuff, and this movie could have easily been really boring because of how different it is from the comic, which is an issue for some people, but I treat the comics and the films very differently. I just look at how good of a movie this is. And because it is in the hands of the Russo brothers, it's a great movie. I don't know what else really to say other than I love the finale of the movie. I love the battle at the end. Just really everything about this movie to me is what I wanted from it. It was a battle between the Avengers. It had a great central conflict. Just this movie worked on every level that it could have worked, except for the villain in the movie. I guess you can call him that. He's this German spy. Yes, he fits the tone of the movie, but he just wasn't a great character. That's the only reason why I don't put it in S tier. So yeah, and nah, I like Homecoming more. So still a really really great movie, just held back slightly. Next up is a movie that I kind of hate to put in this tier, but Captain America the First Avenger has to go in C tier. This is not a bad movie. I want to stress that very much. I sort of like the First Avenger. The first third of this movie, which is an exploration of Steve Rogers as a character before he kind of gets transformed into, the super soldier. I love all of that. But the middle part of the movie and the ending is so cheesy and so by the numbers action movie that it really bogs down the rest of the movie. This, if it was more of an exploration of Steve Rogers as a character and then maybe having that all that crazy cartoony stuff at the end of the movie, I think that would have worked a lot more. But just because it's such a jump in tone that I can't put it in the B tier. I really can't. I wish I could, but Red Skull is such a cheesy villain, and they montage through World War II. Just those kind of dumb decisions really don't work for me. I love the ending of the movie where he comes back in New York. I think that's great. However, kind of the middle and towards the end of the movie, the climax just, it gets pretty dumb in places and really ruins what could have been an amazing movie with at the first act. So yeah, wasted potential. Now getting to a movie that is not wasted potential at all, Captain America: The Winter Soldier is in the A tier. Yes, I do like it slightly more than Civil War, just because it doesn't have that small kind of villain problem. This movie, there's a reveal in it that it can go either way for me sometimes. For now, I'm leaning on the side of wow, that was really clever, and the way they set it up is really good. Yes, I do get that it is kind of ridiculous and is kind of cartoony. However, I think in this universe, like in the MCU, I think it is pretty clever. Uh, you know, you kind of have to hold these kinds of MCU movies to a certain standard, and for the yes, there's gonna be some cheesiness and some dumb things in it. However, if you can look past those and then look at the movie, you know, it, it's weird. It is very weird. It is very far fetched. However, I think this movie makes it work. Again, the Russo brothers really do make it work. The direction is fantastic. A lot of the action scenes are great. I love Bucky Barnes coming back in this movie. Captain America is fantastic. Scarlett Johansson is also really good. This movie just it's a great Captain America movie. It's the middle ground between I don't think Civil War is a Captain America movie, but I still really love it, and it's a lot better than the first Avenger. So I think it's one really great Captain America movie that we got, and I think it really works. I know a lot of people aren't huge fans of it. I know a lot of people love it, so I'm leaning towards loving it, but realizing it has some cheesiness to it that kind of holds it back. So, still a great movie, still very much worth a watch, but not quite S tier. Very close, but not quite. And again, going from one of the best MCU movies to going to one of the worst, Captain Marvel. Now, yes, I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding this movie. I don't want to deal with any of that. I just, none of the politics, just how good of a movie this is. And this is not a good movie. It really isn't. The 90s nostalgia is barely there. It's just sprinkled in, and I really don't like that. I'm really sick of 80s nostalgia just being everywhere, and I want 90s nostalgia to, kind of reign supreme. And when this movie promised that, I was like, oh, that's going to be, finally something 90s that, something that's soaked in 90s ness. And it really wasn't. It was one reference to the clothes, one reference to Blockbuster, and one Nirvana song. That's it. And that sucked. Honestly, it really sucked. Brie Larson isn't likable whatsoever. There are some really, really dumb lines in this movie. It's everything that I hate about a Marvel movie. Earlier, I was talking about how Infinity War is everything I love about a Marvel movie. If you ask me, hey, what don't you like about Marvel movies? I would just say, go watch Captain Marvel. Just because it's dumb. The humor really doesn't work for me. Yes, Samuel L. Jackson is fantastic. He's the one kind of saving grace in this movie. And it's not one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but it's not a good movie either. So, easily a D tier for me. Doctor Strange is a weird movie for me. And I'm going to put it in C tier, above, probably right in the middle there. Just because a lot of it works for me and a lot of it doesn't. The visual side of this movie is fantastic. I love everything about this movie visually. I think it's one of the most ambitious Marvel movies visually, and I think it all really pays off, and it makes the movie fun to rewatch. However, Mads Mikkelsen is a terrible villain. I love him as an actor, but his villain is extremely boring. Benedict Cumberbatch is likable, but there's a real sense of kind of like sarcasm poisoning with him. It can be a bit much. He can just be too much of a tool bag. And, yeah, there's not really that much else to say about this movie. For as unique as it is visually, story wise, it kind of falls flat for me. So yeah, not one of my favorites, not one of my least favorites. Just kind of a meh Marvel movie for me. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 is another weird one that I do want to touch on. It's going to go to the very bottom of A tier, just slightly above Volume 2, because I think they are very even. But I guess I have to give the edge to this movie for two reasons. One, I think having the Guardians not know each other, I think that makes the humor better, and I think the visuals are slightly better in this movie, in the direction. And there's no gold people, whatever they're called. They're not here, so that's good. So yeah, this pretty much everything I said about Guardians 1, or no, Guardians 2, rather, I think about Guardians 1. I think the soundtrack is great. I love all the characters. Chris Pratt's amazing. Ronan isn't the best villain, but I think he is enough of a threat to work. So, yeah, just pretty much everything about I said about Guardians 2, say it about Guardians 1. Now, earlier when I said it is very close between Infinity War and one movie with my favorite of the MCU, that other movie has to be Endgame. Now, so many people have talked Endgame to death that I feel like it would be a little redundant to talk about it here. Everything that everyone else has said about this movie, I 100% agree with. It's a very emotional movie. It's a very moving movie. The final battle is amazing. I think that the 10 years in the future thing is great. I love seeing how human characters react to that. Just, this is a very serious Marvel movie, and I think it plays off of the same strengths as Infinity War. I think, sort of, you have to join Infinity War and Endgame together. I think, you need to watch both of them at the same time. Yes, or in the same 2 day span. I get it'd be a bit much if you watch them back to back. But you know what I mean. Having Infinity War fresh in your mind makes Endgame better, and vice versa with Infinity War. Knowing what happens in Endgame makes Infinity War better. So I think they play off each other very well. And it's Endgame. It's fantastic. What more do you want me to say? Now, on a movie that I guess I agree with people on is Iron Man 2. This is not a very good movie, pretty much at all. The only reason why I put it ahead of Captain Marvel is because visually, I actually really like the movie. I thought Jon Favreau did a great job with the visuals. I think all the CGI looks really good. There's a lot of really cool shots here. But other than that, it's a very dated movie in the worst way possible. There's a lot of characters here, and none of their motivations make a lot of sense. Especially the villains. Like, why are they doing the things they're doing? I don't know. It's a very convoluted movie. I'm not a huge fan of it. So yeah, Iron Man 2, just a very frustrating movie for how good the other two Iron Man movies are. Did you notice how I said the other two Iron Man movies? Yup. I love Iron Man 3. Honestly, I do. I think it sits right here. And, you know what? Screw it. I'm putting it ahead of Winter Soldier. Now, I am not an Iron Man fan whatsoever. I don't like his character in the comics. I only just came around him in the movies. But from the second, from the second I got out of the theater watching it I think I was in second grade or something, I knew, like, I loved this movie. And everyone else around me said, oh no, it's one of the worst MCU movies easily. And a lot of the reasonings are why I like this movie. The Mandarin twist, I thought that was really clever. Shane Black's writing, I think, really works with Iron Man. The direction is fantastic. Tony Stark's character is amazing. Him dealing with the trauma of uh, you know the Avengers and stuff like that. I really really love pretty much everything about this movie. The humor is fantastic. Yes, the actual villain. I don't remember his name. That's kind of how bland he was. I got his motivation. I did like his motivation. Guy Pearce is a great actor. However, at the end he could be a little too generic, just the slightest bit, and that's the only thing keeping this movie from being honestly S tier for me. It is that good. Um, it sits behind Spider-Man: Homecoming just because I like Spider-Man more as a character. Really, just a biased thing. So, but anyway, Iron Man 3, extremely underrated, and this was one of the ones where it's kind of a controversial opinion. But yeah, Iron Man 3, I think, is an amazing movie. Just, I really like Shane Black, and the way he made it such a not Marvel movie, I guess, is why I like it so much. It's such a refreshing movie. Now, when rewatching the original Iron Man movie, it does feel primitive, I guess, and very, very dated. But you know what? I really enjoy it. Yes, it's going to go in the very back of the A tier. Could easily be in B tier. But I can't put it in B tier just because it started everything. It is the template for all of the MCU movies. It's what started it. And while I do hate when people say, "Oh, the original's easily the best because without it, the sequels wouldn't happen." Okay, yes, but that doesn't mean the sequels can be better movies. That's for a whole other day. That argument is stupid. Anyway, why I like Iron Man so much is because of Robert Downey Jr. He completely embodies the role and takes a character from the comics that I'm really not a fan of and makes him work. Yes, Jeff Bridges' villain is eh. He's at best and pretty dumb at worst. But just the style of how Iron Man movies are written and directed, I love. I love Jon Favreau as a director and a writer. So seeing this how this movie's directed, it's also pretty nostalgic for me. It was one of the first movies I saw in the movie theaters. It's just I don't know. This is another personal one for me, and I don't really have a lot of solid reasons why this is a great movie, but it just is. Except for the Jeff Bridges, that part's disappointing. And now the first Avengers, which is kind of another, I guess, controversial opinion here, but I'm not huge on this movie like everyone else is, but I still think it's a great movie. Like everyone else will put it towards the top, or even say it's one of the best comic book movies of all time. No, not even close. All of these movies, and even Iron Man a little bit, but I think they're kind of on the same wavelength, are much better. And then, The Dark Knight, that kind of stuff, even Kick Ass, I would say, is a better movie. However, this movie is the one that got me into the MCU. It got a lot of people into the MCU. It was one of the most popular movies of the 2010s. It is a defining movie of the 2010s, and for that I have to give it a lot of props. I have a lot of respect for this movie. I guess I respect it and think it's a really good movie more than I actually enjoy it. So that's kind of why it's at, where it is. Still a fun as hell movie to watch, and just pretty much the perfect summer movie. Like if you just, came back from the beach or whatever, or a long day out in the hot summer, and you want to throw on a movie with a bunch of friends, this is that perfect, perfect for that kind of situation. So, yeah, a just fun defined, I guess, is Avengers. I can't really put it better than that. Now, The Incredible Hulk is kind of the punching bag of the MCU, but I can't say that I hate it. I'm gonna put it in D tier. Look, it's not a good movie. It really isn't. Abomination's a terrible villain. Tim Roth is just weird in the movie. The way the actors kind of deliver their lines in this weird whispery thing, and they don't move their mouths. There's a lot of weird. This is a weird movie, very weird movie, kind of the black sheep of the MCU, very much. But it's nostalgic for me. That's really all I can say about it. I used to watch it a lot as a kid, so yeah, I guess I can give it points for that. It's a bad movie. Ooh, Thor. A little bit of a touchy subject here. Now, I know a lot of people really like the first Thor movie, but I am not one of those people. This is a boring to tears movie, and no, not as boring as Thor: The Dark World, which I will get to, but man, that first Thor movie is a slog. It is cheesy. It is, everything on Earth is just pointless. Natalie Portman is not giving a shit at all here. This is just not a good movie. It really isn't. The only reason I put it in C tier is there are moments where I like Chris Hemsworth. I like some of the action scenes, and I would watch it over all of those movies, I guess. Maybe a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, Thor isn't really a good movie. And you know what? I'm going to put it here. I don't know why I put it in C tier. I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, no. I'm going to take it away. It's a bad movie. Thor 1 is a bad movie and deserves to be there. What isn't a bad movie, though, Thor Ragnarok, which is going in S tier. Yes, surprisingly. I love Thor Ragnarok. I love everything about this movie. The way it makes fun of the other two shitty Thor movies. It's kind of cartoony visuals that I think work so well. Taika Waititi's amazing direction and writing. Thor just becoming such a more likable character in the first 5 minutes of this movie. The epic final battle that is actually really good. Really, the only thing holding this movie back from being my favorite MCU movie is Hela. While I do like Cate Blanchett in the role, her kind of intentions are a little generic. Like, she's a very cool villain. She's not a bad villain whatsoever, but her writing isn't the best. That's like the only knock against Taika Waititi I have with Thor Ragnarok is Hela's writing. But other than that kind of small nitpick, I love Thor Ragnarok. It has the most personality out of any MCU movie. It is hilarious. The battle at the end is actually amazing. The direction is really good. Thor is amazing. Just, I know I'm not using a lot of descriptive details here or really, solid critical evidence, but it's just a blast. It's what I want to watch more often than not when I revisit the MCU. It's either this or Spider-Man or the two Spider-Man movies, just because they are the most fun movies to watch, or maybe the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. When I want to put on a superhero movie that'll entertain me, or and it has value even beyond that. It has a decent story, but also Hulk's character is written pretty well. Jeff Goldblum, I couldn't think of a more perfect role for him ever than what he is in this movie. Just come on, Thor Ragnarok is great. And one of the main reasons why I love Thor Ragnarok so much is because Thor the Dark World is the worst MCU movie. Yes, collectively, I think everyone agrees on this. This is a bad movie. This is a boring movie. This is a boring movie. This is a boring movie. I can't explain how boring this movie is without actually just showing footage of it. It's I can't remember a single thing about Thor Ragnarok, or not Thor Ragnarok, Thor the Dark World. I can't name the villain other than he was this stupid elf dude. Natalie Portman is bland as hell. Thor is so self-indulgent and such a boring character. Chris Hemsworth isn't likable. Thor's friends are dumb. This is just the worst MCU movie, easily. It is the anti Thor Ragnarok, and I hate it. Honestly, I hate Thor the Dark World. And finally, wrapping up this list is Spider-Man Far From Home, which goes in the A tier. I'm gonna put it ahead of Homecoming. Now, I know that's kind of blasphemous for some people, but it has everything that is great in Spider-Man Homecoming. However, its visuals are more effective here. I think the direction is better. The visual effects are better. Jake Gyllenhaal is fantastic, and the creative ways he can be a villain in this movie, I think, are better than the Vulture and Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton was just amazing, but we expected him to be. And while I do expect Jake Gyllenhaal to always put out an amazing performance, Mysterio is just an inherently more interesting villain, and I think he was represented really well in this movie. But then again, everything I said about the first Spider-Man movie, put in this one, except that I like Happy and Peter's relationship in this movie way more, and him dealing with the death of Tony Stark is fantastic. Okay, so that is my tier list ranking for the MCU. So I'm just going to say from best to worst, or worst to best: Thor the Dark World, Captain Marvel, Thor, Hulk, or the Incredible Hulk, Avengers Age of Ultron, Iron Man 2, Ant-Man the Wasp, Doctor Strange, Captain America the First Avenger, Ant-Man, Black Panther, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Iron Man 1, Avengers 1, Guardians of the Galaxy 1, Captain America Civil War, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Endgame, and Avengers Infinity War is my ranking of the MCU. I know that was a mouthful, but, I just wanted to get that out there. Anyway, I had a ton of fun doing this. I am so glad to be back making videos, and I really hope to see you the next time I put out a video, or make a better outro.